phases where I get tired of playing one particular guitar and then I'll kind of like lay it down for a little bit, but then I pick it back up and it's like, man, I love this guitar. So this is my LTD M1000 Deluxe. I've had this guitar for, man, since like, I think 2009. Anyway, guys, so you heard the solo just now. And what I want to do in this video is I want to break down that solo and just share the good and the bad and the kind of ugly as well. Yes, we are going to critique Jason's solo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you hear this piece by piece with the full mix again, but also with just the solo track. And this is where we can really kind of get into it here. You'll see what I'm talking about, or you'll hear what I'm talking about. So here's this the first part of the solo. Let's check this out. Okay, so I'm actually pretty happy with the solo so far. This first little section there, I start out with a cool little melody, and then we go into some kind of light finger tapping there, and that finger tapping part kind of like follows the melody. It's kind of like an addition to the first melody you heard. So I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with the full mix, and I'm pretty much okay with what you heard with just the guitar. Again, that's when things can be revealed, which we're about to get to in this next part of the solo. Okay, so this is a technique that I've actually never ever attempted before, and for whatever reason I tried it. It's that finger tapping thing that you do with your hands on the wrong side of the neck here. It's actually not something I'm interested in getting better at. I mean, that was very sloppy, by the way. It sounded okay in the full mix, maybe kind of passable, but then of course when you heard it on its own, it was like, oh, Jason, dude, did you just pick up the guitar yesterday? Like, what's wrong? Well, there's a lot that was wrong with that. But this is one of those techniques, and I'm not saying you should not or should do this technique. If you want to practice it, by all means practice it. I think, who is it? Michelangelo Baccio, he does a lot of that where he's just going back and forth, with the hand position there. It's honestly not for me. It doesn't feel natural for me, and to me it's kind of like unnecessary. Not saying it's unnecessary for someone else to do it, but for me it's completely unnecessary. It's not something that you'll probably ever see me do again. It's one of those things like, okay, look what that person's doing. That looks cool. But honestly, you can get the same effect just by having your hand, the proper way on the guitar. Again, I'm not saying you should not perform this technique. If it's something that you want to get good at and do, by all means do it. For me, it's just, again, you probably will never hear me attempt that. That was very sloppy, and let's move on to the next part of the solo. Okay, so maybe I redeemed myself here after that sloppy mess that you heard earlier. So what I'm doing here is I go into this, like, it was either a 2 or 3 note little sweep pattern, which goes right into a finger tapping melody there. And then from there, I go into another melody. So that all kind of worked out. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, here's the thing about the finger tapping. You notice I did some finger tapping in the beginning of the solo. I kind of run the risk here of overdoing the finger tapping. Maybe I would do something different here. I think maybe what saved me is the fact that I'm tapping on a different place on the fretboard. We're on the higher notes as opposed to where we were in the beginning of the solo. So there's some differentiation there, which I like to have that diversity in the solo. So let's move on to the next part of the solo. Now, this is one of the techniques that I love, and I want to get better at this. I haven't used much of this in my past solos or albums or recordings, but it's something that I've started doing a little bit more of. And it kind of reminds you of Iron Maiden's Wasted Years, which, man, I do an acoustic version of that. I do it at my live solo gigs. Pretty cool. People are like, he's playing Iron Maiden on acoustic. That's cool. Anyway, that was a side note. But it kind of reminds you of that technique. They're using that open string and the alternate picking, and you're muting that string, and you're filling in with those other notes in between. So it just gives it this really cool effect. And of course, depending on what key you're playing in, that determines what open string you can use and the notes that you'll play along with that. So I was pretty happy. Now this was it needed some work here. The timing, like in the full mix, sounded okay, but when I hear it on its own, it's like my timing's a little off there. So I could definitely go back and clean that up, which I don't mean clean it up with tools in the studio. I mean like do it over again, play it over again. And then we've got that scream on the guitar with the harmonics. So sometimes I nail that just in the right place, which I did this time. Sometimes I don't, and you can tell, but you know, did a pretty good job here. I'm pretty happy with this part. Again, if I were to re-record this, I would just work on my timing in that open string part of the song. Okay, so right after that, I go into some more finger tapping. This is something that I would absolutely change if I were to re-record this solo, because I'm basically doing kind of the same thing that I just did a few seconds prior to the last section there. So I would change this around a little bit. I probably wouldn't do any sort of tapping. I might would have continued with some sort of melody to kind of take the listener on a journey. You know, I've talked about this in prior videos. You want to take your listeners on that journey. And I don't mean Journey the band, although that's kind of cool too, but you know what I mean. You want to like captivate them. So I would have totally ditched this little tapping piece that I did, because again, I've already kind of done that, so I don't want to replicate that over again. I want to give you something new and just kind of keep you on the edge of your seat, which I didn't do. So this part of the solo is kind of a fail. Let's move on to the next part. This is probably my favorite technique for playing lead guitar, and what I truly consider shred guitar is the speed picking. I love it. I feel like I'm somewhat accomplished at that. I've been, you know, playing that style for a long time. You'll probably hear some of that in almost every solo that I put out there, just because I love the technique. I try not to overdo it, but I'm very happy with what I did, both in the full mix, of course, and the part that you heard just by itself. Everything was pretty smooth there, and a lot of that comes from, first of all, I'm using the neck pickup. That gives you just a little bit more bottom end, and it kind of helps clean things up. The speed picking is pretty spot on for the most part. I don't want to give myself too much praise here, but I'm very happy with that part of the solo. Also, I'm doing some light palm muting, kind of back and forth. I kind of hold my palm there lightly, and then I'll just gently take it on and off, pull it on and off throughout the solo. I can't really explain what I'm doing there because it's just instinctive, and this is something I tell you guys, you know, practice, practice, play, and these instinctive things will just kind of come out of nowhere, and it will just be part of your style, your personal brand, so to speak, as a guitar player. So anyway, happy with this part. After the speed picking, I didn't continue that. I went on to this really cool bend, and that bend just, I'm really happy with this part of the solo, so we'll just leave it at that. But let's hear the last part of this guitar solo and critique it. Okay, so after that really cool bend that you heard earlier, we go into the ending of the solo where we're basically combining techniques together here. We're combining a little bit of speed picking, and we're also doing some hammer-on pull-offs. I'm pretty happy with the technique, but I would probably change it to be a little bit more melodic. I felt like there were some areas that could use some work, like that could use some more thought, if that makes sense. Okay, well, what melody can I kind of throw in here with that? Because the ending of the guitar solo, I kind of want to go out with a bang, you know, you might want to give some of your best at the end there, but at the same time, I also want to leave you with a memorable piece of music. So sometimes the memorable solo part, or part of the solo, isn't necessarily the super fast stuff that's done. It's the melody. It's like, oh my God, okay, I hear that in my head. So if you can combine that with some of the fast technical stuff, then you've really got a win. You're going to captivate your listener even more because you're going to be doing some cool stuff, but it's got that melody. So I would change that a little. I would try to make that just a little bit more melodic. So what is this solo exactly? Is this like part of a song? Like, Jason, did you release this? No, actually, as you would probably guess, this is just some random solo that I whipped out in the studio here. I'm like, hey, you know what? I've got this cool rhythm. Let me play a solo to it, and you know, I just wanted to film some content for social media, and I'm like, you know, I kind of dig some certain parts of the solo, but of course there's certain parts I didn't dig so much, and I'm like, I can turn this into a learning experience for you guys, and just kind of critique my own solo, allow you guys to add your comments, which please comment below. Tell me your favorite part of the solo. Tell me the parts that you don't like, you know. I even shared a lot of the parts I don't like. It's good to critique yourself, right? But what I want to tell you guys, this is extremely important. I know I've been kind of ripping apart my solo here, but don't be overcritical of yourself. Don't overthink the process. When you're writing music, especially when you're playing guitar solos, one thing I'll tell you is you don't have to shred every single note, and I probably attempted to play too fast too much throughout the solo. Again, I just whipped this out. This wasn't something that was even really thought out. I'm like, let me just play along with this rhythm. Actually, that rhythm was from either my last video or the one before that. It was on one of my lesson videos that I give my Patreon supporters the backing tracks and guitar tabs to. So, you know, if you guys haven't seen that yet, if you're a Patreon supporter, definitely log on to Patreon and you'll see the last lesson there. But anyway, so yeah, I figured I would just lay down a solo to that rhythm. I like the rhythm. It was a very melodic rhythm. I'm like, let me lay something down to this, and it, you know, it was okay. But again, I wanted to turn this into a learning experience for you and just kind of share some of the things that I thought went well and some of the parts where it's like, okay, yeah, that didn't work. But again, I want to reiterate, guys, don't be overly critical of yourself, but also on top of that, there's kind of that balance of taking those chances. I took a lot of chances in this solo, right? I did some things, weird stuff that I'd never tried to do on guitar before, and found out this is just not something I like, so I'm not going to worry about it. Hey, but at least I attempted it, right? But there's a fine balance between that and playing technical and trying to play fast, also mixing in the melodies with the guitar solo, and playing things that are also within your comfort zone, meaning they're your strength. You're displaying your strength. So speed picking, for example, that fast speed picking part that you heard me do, that's actually in my comfort zone because it's something that I started working on early on as a guitarist, and it's something that I developed over the years, and it's kind of part of my signature style, I guess you could say. So it's something that kind of feels natural to me. Tapping, I do a lot of tapping and hammer-ons. That's something else that sort of feels natural to me. Sweep picking is something that does not feel natural to me, so I don't do a lot of it, and I certainly don't overdo it, right? Now, if you want to get good at the techniques that you're not so great at, of course you put more time into it. There's no other answer. You practice, and practice more. But you have to decide that, are those techniques that maybe I'm not so great at, do I really want to bring those up? Not saying you shouldn't, but you have to decide this. Is this going to be really part of my brand, or do I already have a set of strengths that I would rather focus even more time and energy on those strengths instead of trying to boil the ocean and, you know, be somebody that can just play it all? Focus on those strengths, which I believe will help develop your personal style even more if you focus on those. I'm probably confusing even myself here, but I'm not saying don't focus on the stuff that you're not good at. But again, like sweep picking, for example, I'm probably never going to be the person, the guitar player that will just do the endless sweep arpeggios all up and down the neck. It sounds great. It takes a lot of talent to do that, but it's just not something that's part of my style, and it's not something that I really care to do. However, I do want to get better at the technique. So I will. So I will spend some time practicing that technique. But again, I don't care about going overboard for me and just doing arpeggios all up and down the neck. Some people do that. It sounds so smooth and they're great at it. It's just not part of my brand, right? It's something that I want to be able to whip out of my back pocket here and there and just throw it in and then pull it right back out. So it's like, oh wow, okay, that sounded cool. That was a little bit different in Jason solo, but now I'm back to this melody or back to this tapping piece or whatever. So I guess all that said is you definitely want to see what comes natural for you and focus on that, on building that first, okay? Everything else you can also practice. You certainly can do that. And I guess right now I'm talking to you intermediate players and up. You know, if you're new, you know, focus on the basics and build upon those. But if you've been playing for any amount of time where you feel that you're at least at that intermediate level, you're playing some guitar solos, you really have to start like honing in on where are my strengths as a guitarist and what's part of my brand, what's part of my signature sound and style, and really push those. And again, you can expand on them, you can learn new techniques, get better at other techniques, but make sure you're staying focused on what what comes most natural to you. And I think that's how you're going to develop your personal style. And I'll end with this, guys. It's not, man, you know, this is extremely important. I really want you guys to get this, because it's not so much about becoming the guitarist that can, you know, play all this cool stuff on camera. Because if you can't fit that stuff into a song, you know, you just heard a song, I tried to fit some stuff into a song, didn't quite fit, right? But if you can't fit that stuff into a song to where it captivates people and it moves the listener, then you're just kind of just showing out, look what I can do, and there's just not a lot of substance to it. So understand that you're going to have things that you're naturally better at than others. So you definitely want to build on those. Do the other stuff too. I'm not saying neglect it. I hope I'm making sense. But put more energy into the stuff that is just becoming natural to you. And that will grow too, guys. That's the thing. As you do that, that will also expand and blossom. So just kind of stay on that path, keeping in tune. No pun intended. Keeping in tune with yourself, though, if that makes sense. So guys, leave me your comments. I want to real quick just say thank you. Don't forget to check the links in the description of this video. You guys know I've got my free metal guitar practice guide. There's some rhythms and some lead patterns in that practice guide. If you don't have that, it's called Metal Riffs and Licks. That's completely free, so download that. That's going to be the first link that you'll see as you scroll down in the description. Below that, if you already have my free practice guide, get that first. But if you already have that, you'll see my guitar courses. I've got a beginner's guitar course for metal guitar. I've also got my Metal Riff Master course, which if you're at that intermediate level, then that's going to just help you expand beyond that, okay, and take things to the next level. So check those out, guys. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you supporting my channel. Please give this a thumbs up. YouTube likes it when you do that. Hey, and so do I. And make sure you're subscribed, guys. I know this channel is growing, and I want to thank everyone for the growth of this channel. My commitment to you is to keep giving you cool content. So on that note, guys, you know what to do until the next video. Wait, what is that? Oh yeah, keep it metal.